you are more likely to be stabbed, strangled, or beaten to death by someone's bare hands than killed with a high-capacity firearm. Because of this, high-capacity firearms should not be banned. If the opposing argument is simply that the law-abiding citizen should not have a high-capacity firearm just because there is no reason for a citizen to possess this type of weapon, then the argument goes against what makes America the land of the free. If a law-abiding citizen that will never hurt another person has a high-capacity firearm, it is in fact their Second Amendment right to possess that firearm regardless of anyone's opinion. If the argument is that the high-capacity firearm is dangerous in the wrong person's hands, then why should the law-abiding citizen have to suffer for the actions of a criminal? The answer to that is that we should not have to suffer for the actions of criminals. The criminal will always commit criminal acts regardless of any laws that are set forth. To impose on the laws of the Constitution and restrict law-abiding citizens is a crime in itself by our government. First, I will talk about statistical evidence providing little to no decrease on gun violence after several bans since the 1990s. Then, I will talk about law-abiding citizens versus threats within our country. Finally, I will talk about our Second Amendment laws and how our government is not abiding by our Constitution. The statistical evidence shown in the Foundation for Economic Education, written by Corey Ianco, states that in 2014 in Los Angeles, there was approximately 328 murders committed with a high-capacity rifle, in contrast to the staggering 1,576 murders that were committed by knives. There was 435 murders that were committed by blunt objects and 660 murders that were committed by hands and feet. In another article in the New York Times, written by Sarah Mervosh on December 18, 2018, she states more people died in the United States from firearms in 2017 than any other year since 1968. She goes on further to state that gun deaths went up more than 1,000 deaths in 2017 from the previous year in 2016, and that 2/3 of them were suicides. So I'm asking you, are all of these bans and gun restrictions even working? The fact is that they are not working. The fact is that these infringements on our Second Amendment rights are only affecting law-abiding Americans. It is very difficult for me to not sympathize with people that suffer from depression or mental illness, but the fact remains that over 60% of the firearm deaths have one thing in common, and that is mental illness. According to Sarah Mervosh from the New York Times, this information was gathered from the CDC's electronic database, which goes back 50 years. The CDC is a federal agency that stands for the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, which their goal is to improve overall public health. The numbers do not lie. There is no denying that in the past 2 decades, the United States has seen an uprise in threats within our country. What's the solution? We the people are the solution. The large-scale threats would be September 11th, all of the school shootings, the movie theater shooting, the Orlando nightclub shooting, and the list goes on and on. One thing all of these have horrific massacres have in common are all of the civilian gun laws and restrictions have absolutely zero effect on these criminals' heinous and atrocious crimes. Then why take away law-abiding citizens' gun rights? In an article reported by KFVS Channel 12 News on January 19th, an elderly homeowner in Missouri was forced to defend himself with an AR-15 when a 30-year-old suspect broke into his home and assaulted him. The elderly homeowner shot the suspect, striking him in the arm. The suspect fled the scene but was later captured by police. The elderly man was taken to the hospital for injuries sustained and was later airlifted to a second hospital for head injuries. In another article by CBS Atlanta News, reports that there was frightening moments for a Loganville family that was forced to fight back against a robber who had a crowbar and was chasing them in their home. A Walton County investigator said that the mother and her two 9-year-old twins were home alone while the husband was at work. The woman and her 2 children were trying to hide by the attic, but the criminal would not back down. So the terrified mother grabbed the husband's AR-15 and opened fire on the intruder, striking him 5 times, which saved her children's lives and her own life and killed the intruder. The United States Constitution became effective on March 4th, 1789. The Second Amendment in our Constitution, according to the online Encyclopedia Britannica, written by Patrick J. Charles, reads, a well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. What this means is that it is a law that an individual has the right to carry and use any type of firearm or firearm capacity for self-defense without any infringements or alterations to one's possession of owning a firearm. For the government to infringe on our gun rights completely goes against our Second Amendment rights. By definition, according to Merriam-Webster Online, the word infringed means to encroach upon in a way that violates law or the rights of another. By definition, according to Merriam-Webster Online, the word encroached means to enter by gradual steps or by stealth into the possession or rights of another. This is exactly what our government is doing. Our forefathers had the foresight 230 years ago when our Constitution became applicable that led them to believe that the government or someone at some point would attempt to step in and restrict our gun rights. And in fact, the government is doing just that. This is a criminal act to go against the Constitution, and it needs to stop. Now, all murders and violence are terrible, but respectively to not having a firearm, a person is more likely to be stabbed, strangled, or beaten to death by someone's bare hands and killed with a high-capacity firearm. This is a fact. The solution to these types of criminal threats can only be solved in one way, and expecting for anyone to pick up the phone to call the local police or federal government as these crimes are in progress in hopes that the phone call will change the dynamics of the crime in progress is absolutely absurd. The high-capacity firearm should not be banned. Today I spoke about statistical evidence providing little to no decrease on gun violence after several bans since 1990. Then I spoke about law-abiding citizens versus threats within our country. Finally, I spoke about our Second Amendment laws and how our government is not abiding by our Constitution. So the next time you are voting, please, I urge you to think twice before voting for more bans on guns, because these bans only infringe on your constitutional rights and law-abiding citizens' rights. Thank you very much, and God bless America.